Looking for magic cards? At flipsidegaming.com you can now use the promo code LVD to get a 10% discount on orders over $10 while supporting the channel at the same time. Hello and welcome to another Magic Arena gameplay video. Today we're taking a look at the Grixis Dragons, and if you've seen the Dragon's Fire upgrade guide, Grixis Dragons is kind of the next evolution in building the dragon deck, so let's dive right into it here. Of course, one of the major reasons to move into Grixis is that we get access to Nicol Bolas the Ravager, 4 mana for a 4/4 legendary dragon with flying, and when Nicol Bolas enters the battlefield, each opponent has to discard a card, so right away we get some value when Nicol Bolas comes into play. And then for 7 mana total, we can transform Nicol Bolas the Ravager into the Planeswalker Nicol Bolas the Arisen, which has a lot of powerful abilities. Starts out at 7 loyalty, which is quite a bit, and then the +2 draws us 2 cards, the -3 deals 10 damage to targeted creature or Planeswalker, the -4 can return a creature or Planeswalker card from any graveyard to the battlefield under our control, and then the -12 is usually also game-winning, exiling all but the bottom card of target player's library. So just a very powerful Planeswalker to have access to, and the 4 mana dragon is still a totally fine card. So let's take a look at the entire list, starting out with our 1-drops, and similar to the Dragon's Fire build, at 1 mana we've got both Sheevan Fire and Shock. Sheevan Fire we can kick for 4 mana to deal 4 damage to target creature. Shock can also target Planeswalkers or players, so a bit more flexible at 1 mana, but having the split of both gives us a bit more flexibility, and we do have a few ways to discard additional cards out of our hand, thanks to Sarkhan that we'll get to in a second. We also have 2 copies of Lava Coil to kind of complement our cheap removal spells, dealing 4 damage to a creature and exiling it if it would die, so great against Rekindling Phoenix and other recursive creatures. Then we also have 4 copies of Treasure Map, which plays an important role in our deck, both smoothing out our draw, then ramping us into some of our more expensive dragons and also providing card advantage. And a flip Treasure Map is a great way to help us transform Nicol Bolas into the Arisen, so also has great synergy there. So we've got the full 4 copies of Treasure Map. Then at 3 mana we've got 2 copies of Fiery Cannonade, dealing 2 damage to each non-pirate creature at instant speed, so great sweeper against go-wide creature decks and tokens. And in the mono-red build we used to play Dragon Egg. That card has now been removed since we don't have as many mountains to pump up our dragon for the fire-breathing ability, and we replace it with Fiery Cannonade instead. Another reason why we want Fiery Cannonade is with the addition of Eldest Reborn, making the opponent sacrifice a creature. Also makes it better to have a sweeper effect to deal with all their small creatures and tokens, so that the Eldest Reborn is more likely to grab something valuable, but we'll get to Eldest Reborn in just a second here. Then we still have the full 4 copies of Sarkhan Fireblood, which is one of the centerpieces of the deck. 3 mana Planeswalker that starts out at 3 loyalty, the first +1 ability letting us discard a card, and if we do we can draw a card, which is useful at maybe filtering out some of our useless removal spells in some matchups. To find more action in the late game we can discard lands. Sometimes we'll have multiple of the same legendary creature in our hand that we want to discard, or additional copies of Sarkhan, so just a very useful effect. Then the second +1 ability is the really powerful one, adding 2 mana in any combination of colors to spend on dragon spells. And now that we're a 3-color deck, the mana fixing aspect of the second +1 ability is also very useful, helping us cast cards like Nicol Bolas, and as we'll see in a second, Niv Mizzet as early as turn 4. So just a very powerful effect. And then the -7 ultimate ability is also game-winning, making 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens. Then we've got 1 copy of Spitflame as a nice instant speed removal spell, dealing 4 damage to target creature for 3 mana, and then whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under our control, we can pay a single red to return Spitflame from our graveyard back to our hand. So also synergizes nicely with Sarkhan, since we can discard Spitflame and then maybe later get it back. Then we also still have the full 4 copies of Dragon's Sword as a great way to both ramp and provide card advantage, and in this case also fix our mana. So it's a 3 mana artifact. Whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under our control, we can put a gold counter on the Dragon's Sword, and we can tap it and remove a gold counter to draw a card. And then we can also just simply tap it to add 1 mana of any color to our mana pool, which is great for helping us ramp into our more expensive dragons. And another neat synergy with Dragon Sword is that we get to play turn 2 Treasure Map, and then turn 3 play Dragon Sword and still have 1 mana available to scry with our Treasure Map, so we don't miss out on any value. Then we still have 2 copies of Eric's Bladewing, 4 mana for a 4/4 Legendary Dragon with flying, and if we pay the kicker cost of 3 generic mana, then we also get to make a 4/4 Legendary Dragon token with flying named Karok's Bladewing, so 8 power and 8 toughness in the air for just 7 mana is a pretty good deal, and we still get the flexibility of casting Eric's Bladewing for 4 mana against some of the more aggressive decks. And of course, if we get to make 2 dragons, we get 2 gold counters on the Dragon Sword, which is pretty nice too. And then, of course, we've got the full 4 copies of Nicol Bolas, which replace some of the copies of Eric's Bladewing at 4 mana, and gives us a great late-game ability at 7 mana. Then we've got 2 copies of the Eldest Reborn, which I alluded to earlier, 5 mana enchantment. When it enters battlefield, each opponent has to sacrifice a creature or planeswalker, so still great against creatureless decks that rely on planeswalkers. Then on the 2nd chapter, each opponent has to discard a card, and on the 3rd and final chapter, we can return a creature or planeswalker card from any graveyard onto the battlefield under our control. And then we also have 3 copies of Demanding Dragon, 5 mana for a flyer, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage to target opponent unless they sacrifice a creature. But of course, with all the removal spells we have, it's not unlikely that the opponent just doesn't have anything to sacrifice and has to take 5 damage, in which case it's kind of like the Demanding Dragon had haste. And then at 6 mana, we've got 1 copy of Lathlas, Dragon Queen, as one of our payoff cards for playing a bunch of dragons. 6 mana for a 6/6 legendary creature with flying, and whenever another non-token dragon enters battlefield under our control, we get to make an additional 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. And for 1 and a red, dragons we control get +1/+0 until end of turn, so great anthem effect for all our dragons. And then last but not least, 2 copies of Niv Mizzet, another reason to dip into blue, 6 mana for a 5/5 legendary dragon with flying that cannot be countered. Whenever we draw a card, Niv Mizzet deals 1 damage to any target, and whenever any player casts an instant or sorcery spell, we get to draw a card, which will also trigger the first clause, letting us deal 1 damage to any target. So works very well with both cards like Sarkhan Fireblood, letting us discard and draw, which will trigger Niv Mizzet dealing 1 damage. Also works very well with Treasure Map. If we sack a treasure to the Transformed Treasure Cove, we get to deal 1 damage with Niv Mizzet. Treasure Map and Sarkhan both also help us ramp into Niv Mizzet ahead of schedule. So just very synergistic in our deck. And of course, if we're just casting some removal spells like Lava Coils and Shocks, we get to draw additional cards too. Don't want to overdo it, so we just have the 2 copies of Niv Mizzet, since he is still legendary, but we're kind of diversifying our threats a little bit with Lathlas and other dragons. And then our mana base, we've got 1 basic island, 6 basic mountains, then we've got 8 shocklands, 4 watery graves and 4 steam vents, and then a bunch of checklands, Sulphur Falls, Dragonskull Summit, and also 2 copies of Drowned Catacomb, which give us enough black sources to help us cast Nicol Bolas and the Eldest Reborn. And of course we do still have our Dragon Sword and Treasure Map to kind of help there too. And then enough blue where we can somewhat reliably cast our Niv Mizzet, even if we don't have a ton of other mana fixing available. But of course mainly a lot of red mana to help us cast turn 3 Sarkhans, which is very important in this list. So that covers the main deck. Don't have a sideboard build, but you've got a ton of options now that you're playing 3 colors. In black you can get access to some cheap removal spells to help you deal with indestructible creatures like Adanto Vanguard. You could consider Fungal Infection, Moment of Craving for example, to gain a bit of life back, also useful against the aggressive red decks. Don't want to play any double black cards since the mana base doesn't quite support them, so Vraska's Contempt, Ritual of Soot, it didn't quite make the cut, otherwise the mana base would be a bit too sketchy. But in blue you get access to some counter spells. Negate for example would be a fine addition, maybe even Dive Down to protect your dragons from spot removal spells. And in red you can also get access to more cheap removal spells. Additional copies of Lava Coil, Shock or Shivan also makes sense. So yeah, that's the deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Alright, we're on the draw and our hand looks fine. Turn 2 Lava Coil, turn 3 Dragon Sword, turn 4 Demanding Dragon. And I think we'll lead with a tapped Warrior Grave here. We've got the Mountain for the Lava Coil. End of turn opt, so it could be any blue deck. Opponent keeps card on top. Picked up a Fiery Cannonade, which if your opponent is on the mono blue tempo deck is not always too effective. Instead untapped Steam Vents and picked up a Treasure Map, which is pretty good here. So we'll try to play that one. See if it resolves. It does. Alright, so we get to live the dream here. Treasure Map into Dragon Sword, Scry with Treasure Map into a big dragon. So it looks like they're on the Is It Drake's deck. Bottom's a card. Another opt. And another tapped Steam Vents. Let's play our mountain for now so we don't have to pay the life. Play Dragon Sword, pass a turn. And then we're pretty much looking for additional dragons. Alright, radical idea. This opponent hasn't found any drakes yet, no Electromancer to speed things up. And Niv Mizzet we probably want to keep here. It's going to take us a while before we can cast it, but with the Transform Treasure Map we can get there. So we'll keep. And then just take a draw step and play a Demanding Dragon, which is going to deal 5 to their face. I guess next turn we can already cast a Niv Mizzet thanks to our Dragon Sword. So don't even need a Transform Treasure Map necessarily. And Niv Mizzet against the Drake's deck is pretty backbreaking if they can't answer it right away. Because all those cantrips start dealing damage. Goblin Electromancer, finally. Do they have a land so they can maybe use 2 burn spells to finish off the dragon? They don't. Alright, I mean, I think we're just slamming Niv Mizzet here. Can attack first. Turn 4 Demanding Dragon, turn 5 Niv Mizzet. So they're gonna have to cast their cantrip in response. Discards a shock. And with their opponent at 8 life, I have a hard time imagining them surviving the next turn. But it's not impossible. Alright, Beacon Bolt, that's definitely a good start. Clean answer to Niv. I mean, as clean as it gets for the Drake's deck. So they get to Beacon Bolt and then jumpstart Beacon Bolt, killing Dragon. Yeah, Beacon Bolt's not a card you see in very large numbers, but the perfect answer here. 6 damage, so they get to kill both dragons for 4 mana thanks to Electromancer. I did mean to scry with the treasure map on upkeep here, but we'll do it now. Before we draw with the Dragon Sword, which I think is our plan. Bottom the Sulphur Falls. So that worked out. And then we'll draw with the Horde. Alright, Sarkhan's not bad. So I do like killing the Electromancer. Do we use a Shock or something else? Shock's probably fine. And then we get to play a Sarkhan as well. So we'll play Sarkhan. And at this point we can probably discard Fiery Cannonade. Eldest Reborn's quite good here. And we'll shock the Electromancer, keep Lava Coil to answer potential 4 toughness Crackling Drakes or Enigma Drakes. Eldest Reborn, great answer to an opposing Niv Mizzet too. So on upkeep we can transform Treasure Map. Alright, there's a Crackling Drake. And Eldest Reborn also beats Dive Down from the opponent, which could be a way for them to protect it from our 4 damage effects. So let's transform Treasure Map, improve our draw step, and look for additional dragons. So I think step 1 is to draw with the Dragon Sword. Draw lands. Then we'll discard Watergrave with Sarkhan. Nicol Bolas is pretty good here. If they don't have a dive down, we could Lava Coil, Crackling Drake, and then still play Nicol Bolas. If they dive down, we can Spit Flame in response to still kill the Drake and then play Nicol Bolas. It's pretty mana intensive since we'll have to use all the treasures, and then keep Eldest Reborn to answer Niv Mizzet. Yeah, I can buy that. So, step 1, Lava Coil, Crackling Drake, and see if they have a dive down. If they don't, alright, that makes it easier. Still play Nicol Bolas here. Of course we could have cast Spit Flame and then get it back after playing Nicol Bolas, but that would not have worked out in the case of a dive down. Which is a card you'll see every now and then in these Izzet decks. It's not the most common card, but not impossible for them to have it. And now if they do play Niv Mizzet at 6 mana, we'll have the perfect answer in the Eldest Reborn. Alright, shock to Sarkhan. So it looks like they're gonna try and bring back maybe a few copies of Arclight Phoenix to pressure our Planeswalker. We'll see. And of course we can just transform Nicol Bolas next turn if they don't answer him. Opponent will have to deal with Nicol Bolas. Alright, it's gonna be Ral, which can minus to kill Nicol Bolas. But then we can get rid of Ral with the Eldest Reborn. Shock the draw. I guess we can just shock Ral as well instead of having to use Eldest Reborn, so we can keep it for a potential follow-up creature, but we'll draw first with a Dragon Sword. Alright, more Dragon Swords. We'll draw with a Treasure Cove, I think. Lava Coil. Alright, so now I'm definitely fine discarding Spit Flame since we've got Lava Coil too. Land, so play a Dragon Sword, use Shock on Ral. Would be nice to have Eldest Reborn taking down and eventually getting back a dragon from the graveyard, but I think playing it safe might pay off, and then we'll keep land in hand to discard to Sarkhan next turn. So we've got plenty of answers to opposing creatures. Lava Coil can also exile Arclight Phoenix if they get it back. Alright, and there's Niv, perfect, so it paid off to hold on to Eldest Reborn here. And then discard, I think we still discard Steam Vents over the second Sarkhan in case they kill it. Pick up a land, draw with Treasure Cove. More lands. Alright, we're bound to find a dragon at some point here. But for now I think we'll play lands they go. Could also play another Sarkhan to keep looting, discarding lands. Could be okay too, we lose out on 1 loyalty essentially. But that might be worth it here. Sure. More Sarkhans, alright. Don't think we'll play this one. Want to hold on to our treasure to draw with a Cove. So, I mean, we could be in trouble if our opponent has a second Niv Mizzet here, I guess. The Beacon Bolt definitely kept him in the game. Not many other cards that could have saved him in that position. But we still have a lot of resources to work with here. Phoenix going after Sarkhan can put it to 1. That's fine. Opponent says go, treasure map. Opponent has to discard to Eldest Reborn. And discards another Beacon Bolt, so opponent with multiple copies. I think the plan is to scry first with the treasure map before we draw with the Treasure Cove. Improve our draw step and go from there. Alright, Nicol Bolas is fine. And I don't think it's possible for us to transform Nicol Bolas at this turn cycle. So we'll just draw with the treasure token. So yeah, we won't have the mana to transform Nicol Bolas right now, but we'll just play it, and then we can draw a bunch with the Dragon Swords, and also return our Spit Flame. Opponent has to discard their last card. Discards Enigma Drake, return Spit Flame. And then the question is what to do with the Dragon Swords and the Sarkhan. We could just Lava Coil the Phoenix too. It doesn't seem necessary right now. So I think we will just discard Sarkhan. Don't doubt my methods. Draw another Nicol Bolas, just in case. And then say go. And then next turn we'll get back Niv Mizzet with the third chapter of Eldest Reborn. Can cast our instants and sorceries afterwards. Sure. So I don't care too much if Sarkhan dies here. Don't really need him. And we don't need to draw with the Dragon Swords yet, since once we get back Niv Mizzet and we draw with the Hordes, we can deal 1 damage. Alright, sweet. Also picked up our own copy of Niv. So how do we want to sequence things? Can't quite kill the opponent here, but I guess we'll Lava Coil here. See what we draw. I guess we could also scry first with a treasure map. Look for more instants and sorceries. Lava Coil Phoenix. Deal 1 to our opponents. And then I think we'll just play Nicol Bolas. And then just pass a turn here. And then we can draw a bunch with the Dragon Swords to deal more damage with Niv in play. Definitely a lot of options this last turn on how to sequence things. But either way, I don't think we're losing now. More radical ideas. Opponent down to 4. And we still have 2 damage at instant speed here. And next turn we can also transform Nicol Bolas if we want to. Alright, GG's. Sweet, so managed to beat Izzet Drakes. On to the next one. Alright, we're on the play. And we've got a reasonable opening hand, somewhat slow in that we don't have a lot of early interaction, no ramp, so no treasure maps or dragon swords. But given that we're on the play, turn 4 Nicol Bolas or Varix could still be good enough, and we've got the mana to cast it if we draw any land, so I think we'll try it. But if we're up against a very aggressive deck, then this hand could be too slow unless we draw some early ramp or cheap removal. Alright, turn 1 Swamp go. There's a shock, so got that already now. Alright, blue-black. So probably a more controlling deck. In which case Nicol Bolas and Niv Mizzet are going to be valuable. House Guild Mage, alright. Fine target for shock. Even though opponent could have something like a Thief of Sanity, which could be scary, but of course we've got a ton of flying creatures that can just block it. So that's the hope. And we get to play Nicol Bolas here. Opponent could have Acid Scatter, so we could try and bait with Varix Bladewing on 4. But at 3 mana they're going to have even more counterspells available. So I think we still try Nicol Bolas here. Alright, resolves. Opponent has to discard. So we got our value right away. Would be fun if our opponent has a Price of Fame here for 2 mana. But they would have killed Varix as well. Our opponent discards a Ravenous Chupacabra. So they presumably have another answer for Nicol Bolas at the ready here. It's going to be Disinformation Campaign, making us discard. Alright, interesting decision. I think we'll discard Lathless, since if we get to 6 mana, it's more likely that we just want to play Niv Mizzet. And Varix Bladewing is something we can still cast next turn. Same with Eldest Reborn if we draw any land. And given that we already have double blue, I think Niv Mizzet is still pretty realistic. So we'll discard Lathless. Alright, Sarkhan, perfect. Will help us ramp into Niv Mizzet here. So let's get in for 4. Play Sarkhan. And then I don't even know if we want to really discard anything, since our hand's pretty decent. If our opponent deals with Sarkhan somehow through a Vraska's Contempt, then we're going to want to keep Varix to just cast for 4 mana potentially. And otherwise we're just ramping into Niv, and any land lets us cast Eldest Reborn, which is going to be reasonable if our opponent plays any creature. So I think we'll just add 2 mana and not do anything.
I will call the dragons.
And the hope is that we just get to play Niv Mizzet next turn. Opponent could play a Thought Erasure. Instead it's just going to be a Ravenous Chupacabra. Alright, so hopefully they don't have any additional Chupacabras, otherwise, of course, Niv Mizzet gets answered pretty easily and we don't get a ton of value. But they did discard a second Chupacabra already, so the chances of them having a third one's not super high. So what's the consideration here? We could also go Dragon Sword into make 2 mana with Sarkhan, play Bladewing, and get a gold counter on the Dragon Sword, which can provide a bit of card advantage. Not sure if that's better than just playing a Niv. Would also prefer to play Varix Kicked. So I've got a few options. I think we're just gonna go for Niv Mizzet here.
They are coming.
And then hope that if they do remove Niv, it's with some instant or sorcery and not with an enchantment or a Chupacabra. Alright, Etrata, that's fine. So we will get at least one untapped step with Niv Mizzet in play, which is all we can ask for. But then Etrata will make short work of Niv. Opponent with Discovery, so we get a 1 damage effect here. We'll go face. Opponent gets to pick up Disinformation Campaign once again, and drawing Lava Coil, pretty awesome here since 4 damage from Lava Coil plus 1 from Niv is enough to kill Etrata. So we're doing pretty well. So where do we deal 1 damage? What are we likely to play this turn? Are we more likely to loot with Sarkhan or to make 2 mana to play Varix? I kind of like playing Varix just to apply a bit of pressure, in which case we're fine to just deal 1 damage to the face, since otherwise we might have wanted to deal 1 damage to Chupacabra if we're going to draw with Sarkhan, since then Niv can deal an additional point to finish off the Chupacabra. So we'll start by casting the Lava Coil on Etrata, see what we draw with Niv's ability. Alright, Spit Flame's not bad either. But I think we're just gonna play a 4 mana Varix Bladewing here, just to keep up the pressure. And get in for 5 with Niv. So we're missing out on a bit of value by not playing the Dragon Swords first. But we're just trying to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. If we draw 5th land, we get access to Eldest Reborn. Right, opponent with Dispersal, which lets us trigger Niv. So we'll still deal 1 to the face. Dispersal forcing us to bounce Niv back to our hand. But we can just replay it if we want to. And I think we'll keep the Spit Flame. Don't think we'll need a second Sarkhan anytime soon. Could also see discarding a Dragon Sword. I think we'll go with Sarkhan here. So Chupacabra can't make any great attacks. Get to untap, summit, so we can ramp into Niv once again. Or we can just play Eldest Reborn. Have Sarkhan at ultimate range with no creature to pressure Sarkhan. That seems better. And we still have our opponent dead in 2 turns with Varix Bladewing. So I think we'll Eldest Reborn first here. Small chance our opponent has a Spell Pierce, but not super likely. Opponent has to sack Chupacabra. And then we'll just discard a Dragon Sword with Sarkhan here. Probably not going to need it. Nicol Bolas a good pickup too. Could have decided to first loot with Sarkhan. There's a chance we would have wanted to play Nicol Bolas instead of Eldest Reborn, but I think Eldest Reborn just is the safest play here, making sure we get rid of Chupacabra while still adding a relevant effect for later turns. And our opponent's kind of in a pickle now. They need to deal with this Sarkhan. They've got a Varix Bladewing that's lethal. Eldest Reborn providing an advantage. And I think we'll just ditch another Dragon Sword. So step 1, they need to deal with Varix Bladewing. It's going to be a Thought Erasure. So for 2 mana they need to answer Bladewing. So unless it's a Price of Fame, there's not much. Cast Down doesn't do it, of course. Maybe a Moment of Craving can save them. We'll find out. And I'm just going to ultimate Sarkhan because we might not get the chance to otherwise. The tokens do die to a Ritual of Soot, but it looks like our opponent didn't have an answer to Varix anyway. Sweet. Alright, we're on the play. Don't think we can keep a one-lander, sadly. Let's go to 6. This is better. Treasure Map and Sarkhan can both help us accelerate. Don't need a second Sarkhan. And then the interesting question will be whether or not we scry with the Treasure Map on turn 3, or hope to hit an untapped land so we can play Sarkhan. I guess we get one more draw step to find out. Alright, that's good. So sadly, one of these lands will come into play tapped. So might as well be the Catacomb right now. That way we get to play Sarkhan on 3, which helps us get to Nicol Bolas and the Manning Dragon more reliably. Alright, opponent on blue-red, turn to Electromancer, so it could be some sort of Drake deck. They could have a shock to finish off Sarkhan here, but hopefully that's not the case. And I will loot here, discarding Treasure Map, in hopes of drawing into a land here, so if they do happen to kill Sarkhan, we can at least still cast the Nicol Bolas. Alright, Varix Bladewing, so pretty important that Sarkhan survives here, since we need the mana he provides. But looks like, yep, shock is happening. Alright, so we better draw land now. Niv Mizzet instead, it's not gonna cut it. Let's play Treasure Map and hope they don't have negate. That works, so end of turn we get to scry, and maybe on upkeep we'll scry again. Opponent has an opt instead. Take 2. And Crackling Drake, alright. Let's scry here. Sulfur Falls will keep. So we do get to play Nicol Bolas at least. Kind of a reverse Crackling Drake in a way. So unsure here if we want to trade Nicol Bolas for Crackling Drake. If they give us a chance. They could of course just have a Lava Coil and kill Nicol Bolas here, which is going to be the case. Alright, so we're going to take quite a beating here. I think we just take a normal draw step, since I don't want to risk not being able to cast any of our dragons. We'll just play Varix. Alright, so have to trade Varix for Crackling Drake here. A radical idea, discarding Island, so no Arclight Phoenix in the graveyard yet. Another opt. Keeps card on top, that's not a good sign. Attacks with both. Think we still have to trade here. Taking 7 down to 4 is pretty sketchy. I mean, block Electromancer is not terrible. They likely just have a shock here that they can use to finish off the Bladewing if we do. So I think I would rather just trade. And they might have something like Enigma Drake here, or another Crackling Drake. Yep. Alright, so don't think we can afford to scry, just need to naturally hit an untap land for the Manning Dragon. Alright, that works. And that can once again trade off for Crackling Drake. And we get 5 damage out of the deal. Which is probably not as good as drawing a card in this instance. But we're just 1 island away from Niv Mizzet, which is quite powerful here. So it's going to be interesting whether or not we scry with our Treasure Map on upkeep. Or if we try to get lucky. A Lava Coil here would not be enough. to kill Demanding Dragon. So, pretty likely that the trade will happen. Opponent attacks with both. Gotta block the Crackling Drake here, otherwise any instant would kill us. And a second Electromancer into a third Electromancer. Alright. Well, Fiery Cannonade would be nice here. So, I've got a few options. Could just take a draw step. If it's an island, we get to play Niv. And we're technically not dead to the Electromancers. We could scry, hope to draw into relevant interaction. Cannonade, of course, being the best one. Otherwise, just another Nicol Bolas, for example, would be decent too. I think it's worth it to scry. That way we also guarantee that we get to play Niv next turn by flipping treasure map and getting a few treasure tokens. Mountain's not gonna get the job done. And what do we draw? Varric's Bladewing. Alright, I'll take it. So we'll see if this can hold off the Electromancers, or if they're gonna keep attacking anyway. Alright. So we fall to 3. If they have a shock, we're not dead, but they could finish off Varric's. And looks like that's the case, so that's also why they were so eager to attack with Electromancers in previous turns. Well, I meant to maybe scry on upkeep, but I guess this worked out, drew Fiery Cannonade. But otherwise we were just gonna scry with the treasure map and play Niv Mizzet, which would have kept us alive too potentially, but I think Cannonade's just a safer play. So what's our play now? Do we play the second treasure map? Can flip the first one, sack a treasure to play Cannonade? Or do we just not bother and then flip treasure map and Cannonade? I think that's better. So we'll just say go. Wait for the opponent to attack in case they have a hard cast Arclight Phoenix that we can kill with Cannonade too. So I think Cannonade's just, yeah, way safer than going for Niv here, otherwise this would have killed us. Alright, go to combat. We'll flip treasure map first, I guess. Steam Vents can go to the bottom. Cast a nice Fiery Cannonade. That was pretty effective. Get to untap. Play a Niv Mizzet after playing our islands. And I think we'll just say go. No great reason to sack a treasure token right away. Alright, opponent says go. Now we'll sack a treasure, deal 1 to our opponent with Niv's ability. Draw, another damage. Sheevan Fire, great insurance in case of hasty Arclight Phoenix from the opponent. So let's play another treasure map. Play lands and attack with Niv. Could scry and draw with treasure map. Maybe can draw into like a Nicol Bolas that we can play right now, which would be decent. Yeah, it's probably worth it. So we'll scry first. Land can go to the bottom. Draw with Treasure Cove. Dealing 1 to our opponent. And Demanding Dragon is probably better than keeping up Sheevan Fire here. It's gonna deal 5 damage to our opponent, put them to 2, and give us a flying blocker, which can block Arclight Phoenix. Alright, it's gonna be shock to our face, puts our opponent to 1. And another shock would let us kill them before they kill us. Lava Coil. Alright, so they were pretty close here, but Niv Mizzet steals a show, and Fiery Cannonade, pretty key there as well, of course. Alright, that's gonna do it for today's gameplay. Wanna thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day. I also want to thank all my patrons for being part of the channel, and you can become a patron yourself today and decide the topic of future videos over at patreon.com/LegenVD.